So how many of you were in my session last year? And how many of you went to the bar afterwards to drink? So this year, I brought the bar to you. Start the drinking beforehand. This is my 11th O&A, my 11th time doing tech trends. I want to say thank you. I'm glad to see everybody coming back year after year, thirsty for knowledge. My name is Amy Webb. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a quantitative futurist. I founded the Future Today Institute about 15 years ago. We work with Fortune 500 companies, the military, and parts of the government. I'm also a professor of strategic foresight at NYU, Stern School of Business. I started out, this is my second career, so I started out as a journalist. Probably the most important piece of information right now is that if everything is working correctly, I should be live tweeting this presentation. So look at O&A, hashtag O&A trends, and what I'm going to be doing, because I'm going through, here's some 3 quick things about you. You're going to see 247 slides over the next hour. So I am theoretically live tweeting all of the details from all of the slides so that you can easily capture it later on. I've also created a digital folder, so it's got all of the presentation slides. It has our annual Tech Trends report that is about to go live momentarily. All of my research is now open source and public, so you are free to take it, remix it, use it however you want, and build on it. The third thing is you're going to meet some incredibly cool people today. They're going to stick around and talk to you more after they're done talking here about what they're working on. And your job after this session is to, or before you leave, is to at some point go up and meet those people and learn more about what they're working on. So every year, people come to my session to learn about scary new tech trends. I didn't intend it to turn out that way. I don't have an apocalyptic viewpoint on the world, but somehow this is what's happened over the years. These are some of my favorite tweets from last year. Mandy Jenkins, are you by any chance in the room somewhere? So Mandy's tweet was, as usual after O&A trends, I either want to rock slowly in a fetal position or start drinking, or both. So I get that like last year was a little hard on everybody. All right, and as it turns out, some of what I talked about last year, some of those more concerning trends did in fact enter the mainstream in 2018. Remember splinternets? Remember us talking about how the internet might someday very soon look different depending on where in the world you are? Well, guess what? As of right now, a lot of our United States newspaper and magazine and digital-only websites are being blocked all throughout Europe. Remember how I talked about Facebook and its enormous market cap and the fact that our social media networks have largely gone unregulated and untested, and that sometime in the next 10 years, our platforms and distributors would start facing government regulation, which would have secondary and tertiary impacts on the news business? Well, we've got folks showing up now in Washington, D.C. to be grilled, that makes sense, right? Grilled, by our elected officials. We talked last year about the big 9 companies that control the future of artificial intelligence. They now have, just the US arm of these companies alone, now has a combined market cap of $4.3 trillion. They have enough capital under their belt and enough power that they now act like nation states. They are able to go and negotiate with other countries without having to deal with the US government. But a lot more has happened since O&A 17. We've seen unprecedented media consolidation. I know some of you, because I've talked to you yesterday and today, you're suddenly out of work. The Village Voice closed. Gatehouse is shuttering newspapers all over the country. We've seen all kinds of news organizations suddenly go away. And in just 12 months, it's become a lot harder to find local news. So a couple days ago, I searched on Hurricane Florence, and this was the search results that turned up. There was only one local news source, and it was the Baltimore Sun. I live in Baltimore. I like the Baltimore Sun, but we were not in the path of the hurricane. And this is all that showed up. And this time, even new media is vulnerable too. So Vice is laying people off. Gizmodo has laid people off. BuzzFeed is restructuring. So everybody is vulnerable. Meantime, a sitting United States president routinely lies while using a publishing system that is allowing democracy to erode before our very eyes. This person, a couple days ago, took a study and called it bullshit and said that, in fact, 3,000 people didn't die in this hurricane. Maybe it was just 3 or 4, and this was some big conspiracy. A sitting United States president. People are being told to distrust you. You, the people sitting in this room, and your journalism. Ipsos did a poll last month, which I'm sure a lot of you saw, asking about, how people feel about the news. One of the questions was about whether or not the president should have the authority to close news outlets engaged in bad behavior. And guess what? A whole lot of people think that the answer to that question should be yes. 53% of the population thinks 43% of the population thinks that, yeah, the president should be able to shut down media organizations that he doesn't agree with. I really thought this was interesting. They also asked in that same poll how trustworthy the Associated Press is. 60% of Republicans said that the AP is untrustworthy. Here is a challenge to you when you return home. I want you to randomly poll 10 people and ask them if they know what the AP is. All right? And if you don't get answers to that, then say, well, do you know what the Associated Press is? We are being taught new behaviors to immediately, if anything sounds remotely like a traditional media organization, our gut reaction now is, no, we can't trust them. They're part of some conspiracy. They being you. Other democracies are worried about the United States. I encourage you to read this story that was on Mother Jones. So Germany is launching this all-out, they're calling it a beer and brats sort of German fest in the United States. They're going to be going on a diplomatic mission to all 50 states in the United States starting next month. Beer, pretzels, I guess polka music, right? But what they're really doing, the real purpose of this is not to tell Americans about a beer, German beer, but instead to remind Americans the tenets of democracy, that free speech matters. 70 years after we had to restore democracy in Germany, they are now in the United States, reminding us why democracy is important and good for our future. Americans are being told that you, the people sitting in this room, are the enemy. This person, this congressman, didn't like what a journalist wrote about him, and so he tweeted out this person's personal cell phone information, personal details. And in 2018, you no longer have to follow that up by saying, go get this person, because we have been trained to now do that. And our president routinely tells people not just that what you're producing is fake news, but that you're the enemy. You're the enemy of the people. It's gotten so bad that we've had newspapers around the country band together to write editorials to remind people that you're not the enemy, that we're not the enemy, that our job is to shine a light and to report and to inform people. And yet it didn't matter, because we've now arrived at a point where people feel inspired not just to tell you what you're doing is wrong or fake, but to go after you. We've seen death threats being made against journalists. Not too far away from where I live, somebody went into a newsroom and shot journalists. So here's the deal. I don't know what I could possibly show you or tell you that would be scarier than what is currently happening in real life. So that's not what I'm going to do this year. I'm not going to scare you this year. Fuck 2017. I'm not going to scare you this year. And it doesn't mean that there are not scary things for us to be thinking about. But what we're going to do is focus on opportunity. I'm going to spend the next hour showing you slide after slide after slide of things that people are doing right now that are tremendous, of technologies that exist right now and will be coming over the next 10 years that are going to change and revolutionize everything. Because I see opportunity in this fucking mess. I hear opportunity in the cacophony of fake news cries. And I know that there is opportunity in this room. I know there's opportunity in this room because I'm looking at it. I'm looking at you, Dr. Sib. I'm looking at you, Benet. I'm looking at you, Mike. I see tremendous talent and opportunity in this room. I'm looking at smart people. I am looking at innovative people. I am looking at thirsty people. You are the ones, you who are here, are the ones doing important work in journalism. You are the ones who are thinking about the future. And you are the ones who are going to help the managers and the leadership and the investors see the future. That is your job. So the next hour is not for our president. And the next hour, we're not going to talk about failing news organizations. The next hour is for you. I'm a pragmatist. I understand that there is risk ahead, and I'm not saying that I'm suddenly an optimistic human being. I'm not. All right? We have to acknowledge the optimistic, pragmatic, and catastrophic scenarios that always exist with emerging technology. You know how I normally show this after every set of trends every year, the probabilistic model, where I show the optimistic framing of the scenarios, the pragmatic and the catastrophic? I'm not doing that this year. This year, I choose the optimistic framing. All right? And I choose for you to take that optimistic framing back with you and to start putting that into action. Because enough is enough. So you're not going to be scared today. All right? You're going to be fired up. You're going to be fired up because I'm going to show you what's on the horizon. And you are going to start to see opportunities for you and your newsroom and your school and whatever it is that you do. All right? You're going to start to see opportunities for the entire industry. And you're going to meet some incredibly inspirational people who I'm going to bring up on stage and who are going to show you some incredibly interesting things that they're working on. And you're going to leave here ready to fight for our futures. You're not going to leave here scared. You're going to leave here pumped up. All right? So who's with me? Yeah. I don't hear you. Who's with me? Because we got work to do, y'all. All right, you ready? As of right now, we've just launched our annual Tech Trends report specifically for journalism, media, and technology. So I hope I just tweeted this out. If not, I will send it later on. This year, we have 108 different emerging trends. Now, we produce 2 reports a year. One is a huge report that covers everything that gets released in March. This report is something that we create just for journalism. So there's 108 emerging trends this year. It's the second edition of our industry-specific report, and they're curated trends for journalism, for media, and technology. There is a lot in here. It spans many, many different areas. So we've got a whole section on security and privacy, a section on the future of the media business, on hardware, on policy and regulation. And for the first time, we have an enormous blockchain section. So that blockchain section has a whole bunch of different trends for you to be paying attention to. But we also wrote a primer, a non-technical primer for journalists. So this thing will explain to you every single thing that you could possibly need to know about blockchain within the context of news. There's also a whole vocabulary list so you can quickly get up to speed. We cross-referenced all of the other trends in the section. So there's blockchain and how blockchain relates to things like bias and digital frailty and fact-checking and a bunch of other things. And we also included a list of all the different companies that are already doing stuff within media, journalism, and technology. So there's a ton here for you to digest. And there's also a bunch of scenarios that span the years 2019 to 2033. And those scenarios are very robust, and they cross all of the different sections, and they're all written specifically for you to help crystallize for you where we're going. As always, at the beginning of the report, there's a little tear-out section that explains how to use the report and what all the different pieces of information mean. And just a quick note on the methodology. So I'm a futurist. I don't make predictions. Predictions are not what futurists do. We make connections. This is what my methodology looks like. It's explained in the trend report, but it alternates 6 steps. Anybody can do it, and it alternates between thinking very broadly and thinking very narrowly. And essentially, we use qualitative and quantitative data. We look at the future through the prism of these 10 sources of change. So if we're looking at the future of blockchain, you can't just look at blockchains and distributed ledger technology. You've got to look at that through the lens of other areas of life, like education and wealth distribution and even public health. Our job is to identify weak signals at the fringe, analyze patterns that we're seeing in order to spot emerging trends. We use those trends in order to build models for possible, plausible, and probable futures, so the trends are not the end. And then we calculate risk and opportunity based on those scenarios. So given what we know to be true today, what's the next order implications? And the whole point of this is to make better decisions. So we do this so that we can develop new products. This is what you do. Develop new products, services, make better strategic decisions in the present. And the trends are just the beginning. So I know everybody gets excited about the trends every year, but they're just the beginning. They're what you use to create action plans. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to highlight key findings from our 2019 report, and I'm going to go through 15 different emerging trends across 3 different trend clusters. And you're going to see as we go along that the trends build on each other. So this is going to be sort of one big story that we'll get together, meet at the end. And I'm going to make connections over and over again between these tech trends and news and the work that you're doing in your universities and newsrooms. And again, we're not going to see catastrophic scenarios. We're going to talk about opportunity. So what you're going to see is opportunity for the near future. Starting with this. So this is our first key finding. 2018 is the beginning of the end of cell phones. Testify, whoever's clapping. Yes. Yes. Now I know what you're saying. What are you talking about, lady? Did you miss this announcement last week? How many of you have bought your iPhone XS unpronounceable series of acronyms phone? Don't raise your hand. Save yourself. So we're going to come back to the iPhone in just a moment. These are the trends in this section. We're going to talk about mixed reality, spatial computing, base prints, haptic computing, and weird things with computer vision. Now, let's go back to the phone for just a moment. Let's go back, way back, to the year 1998. This was the stuff that I was carrying around with me, because I was super cool. I was not super cool, just letting everybody know. So how many of us had that Nokia phone? Literally, we all had the Nokia phone, right? Yes. Right. So that was my I had a Toshiba satellite laptop that doubled as a self-defense weapon, because it was like 115 pounds. I had that Sony digital camera. The early ones had floppies. Anybody remember that? I had a mini disc player because I'm anal retentive about my music and sound quality, and mini discs, they didn't really make it big in the United States, but over in Asia they were huge. And portable DVD players. So that's 1998. How many of you were at O&A in 2008? I know I was. All right. So that year, some of you remember this flip camera. This is all anybody was talking about. The flip cam is going to change everything. How many people had like flip cams in your newsroom? Literally everybody. How many taught flip cam classes? Right. Okay. 2008, we had flip cams. We had the advent of the flash drive. We had iPod Nanos. We had SLR cameras. That was the year that the App Store launched for Apple, and the BlackBerry, the phone we named after drugs in a loving way, right? So that's 2008. And here we are in 2018. All of that functionality and more is in a single device that some of you are holding up right now taking pictures with. Now, if you were to go back in time to 1998 and tell your newsroom at that point, hey, pretty soon, we're going to be taking video, we're going to be streaming video from a single device. Right? We're going to be recording from a single device. People would have looked at you like you were nuts. Right? And if you had done the same thing in 2008, same thing, right? There's never a circumstance in which we would have that sounds like Star Trek. Right? We're never going to just have a single device that does all of these things. And yet here we are in the year 2018. So that's why this next slide is kind of interesting, right? So here we have this magical device that we all have that does all this stuff, and we can carry it around in our pockets, and yet the sale of global smartphones is tanking. Slowly, but it's happening, right? So what gives? Why are we seeing a plateau? Why was everybody so excited about the new iPhone, and yet we are seeing an erosion of this market? What's going on? Well, part of what's going on is that these new devices really only offer incremental benefits, and the correlation between those benefits and the cost upgrade for those benefits is nuts, right? So that brings me back to this iPhone. Nothing against Apple. Apple's the first trillion-dollar United States company, so they're doing something well, right? But my question is, how big of a difference is this phone, really? It's a little bigger. It's a lot more expensive. The screen's a little nicer. What else is different? So that's why I want us to think a little differently about what else is going on. So if we're not standing online and hurrying up and buying these phones the way that we used to years ago, what else are we doing? What we're doing is we're buying peripherals. We're buying different wearable devices. How many of you have a smartwatch of some kind? Yep. How many of you wear some kind of fitness tracker? Great, now I've got data on all you. I can track y'all. Thank you for that. I'm just kidding. Or am I? How many? We have connected earbuds. So these are actually the earbuds that I wear, and they're terrific. They respond to voice, gesture, but they're connected. They also feed me information, right? And we have smart glasses. Reserve your thoughts and comments about Google Glass momentarily. We have smart glasses coming to market. So part of what's happening here is that this singular device that used to be so exciting and magical and wonderful just doesn't have enough huge benefits anymore. So instead, we're siphoning off that money and we're buying other stuff. So we've gone back now to the year 1998, right? Where we are surrounded by and carrying around a whole bunch of stuff. So that's important because if it's the case that this is the beginning of the end, it doesn't mean that smartphones won't be around next year, but it does mean that over the next 10 years, we're going to see fewer and fewer smartphone iterations and way more other devices, right? So then what happens next? Are we headed toward another point of convergence, right? So if this is the beginning of the end of smartphones, then what? Here's what. And this is not a prediction, this is a data-driven model. What I'm thinking is somewhere between the year 2028 and 2031, we are all wearing smart glasses and wristbands, and instead of having computers the way that we normally use, we're using some kind of tablet. So that brings us to our first tech trend, which is spatial computing. So basically, the way to think about this is machines occupy all the space around us in some way and are responsive to us in real time. So these things use sensors, they use 3D motion capture, they use rendering, they use mesh graphing, rendering, wearable displays, and computational algorithms all at once, either in the cloud or locally, in order to provide us with information. And essentially, the way to think about this is everything around you becomes one enormous computing environment. So if you're not already paying attention to what Sony CSL is doing, this is their R&D lab in Tokyo, you ought to be. So this is a device, so it's kind of like a VR headset. And what it allows you to do is see the perspective of 3 other people at once. So you can see on the left-hand side, 4 different people are looking at their hands, and they're seeing everybody else's hands. And the implementation that they built was this maze where you had like a styrofoam samurai sword, and you would walk around the maze and try to bop somebody on the head, right? But it was difficult because you saw the other, so at the first you're like, oh, great, I'll be able to see where these people are because I can see what they see. Turns out our brains aren't entirely wired to feed 4 streams of visual information in at one time. So it's a really, really interesting experiment in perception and our interaction with spatial computing. And also at Sony, Shunichi Kasahara is doing some very interesting work, not just on spatial computing, but spatial and also sensory computing. So he built a fairly interesting device that doesn't require you to look through, you have to wear it on your head, but there's no lenses. And it allows you to play with light, which surrounds you, but is also interactive with you in real time. But what I'm most excited about is Magic Leap. I'd like to see how many people in here have used a leap. 1, and 2, 3, 4. How many of you have heard of Magic Leap? All right, so here's the deal with Leap. They have been working on this for a long time. And in the United States, if you don't make regular announcements along some kind of ridiculous product cycle that maps to the whims of Wall Street, then you're pivoting or you're doing something stupid or whatever it might be. So these guys have been under tremendous pressure to get a product out. And everybody in the Valley kind of makes fun of them as this ridiculous group that's maybe, it's just vaporware, it's not really anything. Well, I've had an opportunity to sit and play with Leap. In fact, I've brought it with me. And all I can tell you is, this is not ready for prime time. It's not something that you're going to buy and sit around your living room with, okay? And yes, it looks a little janky. All right, I get that. But all this, what this reminds me of, and I haven't spatially mapped this room, I could, and I could have fish swimming all around your heads right now, but I didn't do that. I had other stuff going on. But here's why this is so important and interesting to me. That is because it is going to completely shift and change. I got to take these off because I don't have my glasses on. It's going to completely shift and change how we interact with the world around us. So, for example, these are screenshots that I took because it's kind of hard to broadcast. So this is me taking a screenshot of my house in my home office. And this is the story from the New York Times. So on my desk, I have a vertical monitor and a horizontal monitor. And what I did was I placed 6 other virtual monitors all around my desk, and I used those different monitors to help put this presentation together. And at first it was like, holy hell, like I've got all the monitors, right? I've got all the information. This is amazing. And then it became a little overwhelming, so maybe that was too much. But the point is, it changed my perspective. At some point, I had a little dinosaur hanging out with me on my desk while I was working. Okay, so I can see you like, okay, that's great. How is this any different from all of the other big promises that we've seen with regards to smart glasses? So here's what's different. And here's a little video I made. So this is, I wrote ONA 2018. Okay, so that's very interesting. So what? Here's what. We are very, very, very early days. And my caution to you is that we must exercise patience. So don't judge this the wrong way when you see it. However, you can use this device with other devices and be in a singular environment and import people in from other places. So the shadows that you see here, there's 2 of them, are other people connected, and they're all interacting in the same space. So this is not something you're going to go back into your newsroom and start using tomorrow. But here's what this implies. What this implies is that at some point, you are sitting in a meeting, and you have other team members who can't be in your meeting, who are sitting at the same table with you, and you're all having a conversation about the same stuff, looking at the same things. It means that as a newsroom manager, you're wearing those glasses, and you can, at any moment, take a walk around your office and get information about productivity, about happiness levels, about who's doing what. It means that at some point, I could be sitting on my couch, and my grandmother could be sitting on her couch in Chicago, and we can have a much more intimate experience with each other than FaceTime or talking on the phone. And it is very, very difficult to truly feel what I'm talking about without having experienced it yourself. So I would encourage your newsrooms to get a hold of one of these, to find somebody who has a hold of one of these. At the moment, it doesn't do much. But trying this for the first time gave me the same sensation I felt in Akihabara in Japan in the very early days of internet-connected phones. And I remember seeing and playing with a prototype and thinking, wow, this thing doesn't do much right now, but oh my God, this changes everything. This changes everything, and it's going to be here soon. All right? So it's not just for entertainment. This fundamentally changes how we relate to each other. All right, so I know people are like, okay, but we don't like wearing glasses, right? And so because it's not going to look like this forever. At some point, we're going to be wearing things that look a lot more like the glasses that I wear. Now, this is easy for me to say. I've worn glasses since I was in 3rd grade, right? So I hear from a lot of people, I can never imagine, right? I would never imagine us all deciding that we're suddenly going to wear glasses. Well, guess what? 41% of Americans are nearsighted. Any idea why that might be the case? By 2050, according to a scientific study in the journal Ophthalmology, half of the world's population is going to be nearsighted. We're already going to be wearing glasses, right? Which tells me, this is one of the indicators that tells me that this will add to the acceleration of the adoption of this kind of technology. So let's put that aside for a second and talk about our faces, face prints. So this is object and image recognition algorithms that are capable of recognizing our unique faces inside and out. So this is me. Let's all listen to me for a moment.
Good morning, everybody. This isn't weird at all.
All right, so that's Snap, right? So this is me playing with a Snap filter, which seems pretty innocuous and silly, but if you stop for a moment and think about the technology that went into I rendered this thing on my phone, right? On the thing that's in my pocket. I have animated images that are moving with my face in a realistic fashion because it's mapping me. So it's face prints. So we'll go back to Japan for a moment. So NEC, which is a Japanese company, is developing all kinds of really interesting generative techniques to take 2D images and re-render them as 3D images for lots of different purposes. Some of it has to do with security, some of it has to do with gaming, and others you just have to do with how we interact. So if we combine spatial computing, face prints, and now haptic interfaces, we get to this guy. So the Fluid Interfaces group at MIT's Media Lab, again, this is a prototype. It's not quite ready for prime time, but one of the questions that we've been wondering is, well, if we are no longer talking into phones and we are wearing glasses and earbuds, right? The glasses-earbud combination maybe seems not so great, so what might that imply? Well, it probably implies that we're wearing a slightly wider temple and that we're able to talk, maybe just move our mouths, very slightly whisper, as a way of communicating using that device. And so this is a sort of a speech interface that uses haptics. Really interesting stuff. If we combine all of what I've just told you plus generative algorithms, we get to this. So these are generative adversarial networks. Here's how to think about it. Two neural networks generate and test new strategies, and they sort of cat and mouse style go head to head until one is tricking the other. So you've heard of the Turing test? This is a Turing test, but not for humans. It's a Turing test for the machines. And the purpose of this is not to terrify us all, but instead to get AI to start behaving in unpredictable ways and to develop better code and systems that we could help it do on its own. So GANs are being trained on faces at the moment. And basically, one neural network tries to fool the other while the other one tries not to get fooled. So this is some new research from NVIDIA. One of the systems was told to generate a human face and to trick the other system into believing that that face was real. So it took about 18 days. These were all the different iterations of faces that got made until the very end. And quite frankly, that very, very last picture would fool me too. That looks totally plausible to me. Finally, computer vision for real-world obstructions. So this is where we're using external signals like Wi-Fi, radio signals, different light sources, and neural networks to do things like see through walls. So this is some research out of MIT CSAIL. They're using radio signals and neural networks to literally track people in other rooms without using conventional methods. So this is just an image you can see that's being re-rendered of a person walking without using video cameras or any other motion capture technology. They're also using Wi-Fi and neural networks to do things like using all the different connected devices that we have in our homes, figure out if somebody's fallen and they can't get up, to control devices, to feed information, to send information. And they're also doing, so for the photographers in the room, this is at Jim McMillan, wherever you are, this is right up your alley. This is some cool stuff. So they're also figuring out how to harness active light fields. So it turns out there's hidden data everywhere, and we're surrounded by a bunch of accidental cameras. So just stop for a moment and look around you, look at all the different reflective surfaces, people with phones, people with glasses, people with cameras, people with laptops. All of that is reflecting light. So if there's a way to capture that light and use a smart system to understand what's in it, those images could be recreated. And that's what you see in these images here. So let's put all of these different trends together and see where we wind up. So I'm going to show you some scenarios for the year 2028, about 10 years from now. And again, all optimistic framing. So I'm going to just talk to you about opportunities. So we can start using some of this right now for more in-depth reporting. So reporters could start, again, we're early days, but you could start using things like windows and mirrors and houseplants and all kinds of other objects to track changes in light and shadow to tell you more about what's in the scene, which means that reporters could literally, like Superman, have superpowers. This also means that reporters could start getting really good at investigating the algorithms themselves and, for example, alerting us to photos and videos that have been compromised. That's something that you could start doing. And maybe we specially watermark trustworthy images and photos so that to help people understand that what they're looking at is real. And this is a way to turn misinformation in on itself. We can also use mixed reality, again, not now, but soon, for better accountability. So for example, I could connect to the Baltimore Sun, to the Boston Globe, to the Dallas Morning News, whatever, who have mixed reality reporters. So those mixed reality reporters would do things like feed information into the systems that we're wearing. And can you imagine watching a congressional hearing or being in a meeting and looking at people, and as they're talking, I see all kinds of information like what's their voting record, right, while they're talking? What are their social posts? Without having to toggle between screens, I just see it populate. I can see who's taken PAC money from whom. These are wonderful ways to harness the power of the wearable computing that's coming. And ultimately, this means there is no more fake news. There's just news. There is news that has been spatially computed. And this also presents some really interesting opportunities for revenue streams. News organizations could now, knowing this information, you could be ahead of the curve. You could start developing mixed reality applications for business and professional intelligence, not just cool multimedia storytelling. So this becomes a revenue stream for other people who would buy the information, right? So mixed reality becomes a new revenue stream, and news organizations are making bank. All right, so let's go on to our second of the three sections. The second section has to do with blockchain. So the second key finding is that in 2018, blockchain technology is finally ready for news distribution and payments. So this is what we're going to talk about here. We're going to talk about distributed ledger technology, self-sovereign identity, immutable records, tokens, coins, tokenomics, and shared resource computing. So last year, how many people remember this moment when I talked about blockchain for news? I know that inspired some of you to go back and start experimenting. We finally hit an inflection point with blockchain technology last year. We've started to see a ton of ICOs. Those are initial coin offerings. The SEC has decided it's getting involved, right? Which I think is bad on the regulation side, but good, because it tells us something about the future. We've seen big diversification in the ecosystem, and we're seeing a ton of new, really interesting, clever applications. So that takes us to our first tech trend, which are immutable records. So blockchain technology allows the creation of what are called distributed immutable records of information. So basically, once it's out there, you cannot alter it in an easy way. And you can't delete it, and you can't modify it. Immutable records can be used, so that's what's being used to exchange coins, but it can be used in other ways. So they can be used to distribute general information, not just financial information. So this is a startup called Tron, and basically it's like a peer-to-peer content distribution system at scale. All of this stuff that I'm showing you is currently in operation. It's early days, right? But it basically is a decentralized content distribution platform. So the data on it is cryptographically secure via the blockchain, and the creators get to keep all of their profits. It's being used by in other areas of the world that are other industries. Porn is what I'm trying to say. So it's being used for other purposes at the moment, but it's early days, right? And it's really interesting to think about a decentralized system that nobody can go in and tamper with. Tron also gives content creators total rights to all of their digital footprint. So basically, this kind of cuts out Facebook and Google and the ad brokers from the value chain, which I don't think is the worst thing for content. Immutable records can also be applied to journalism in, I think, some incredibly cool ways, right? So if it's the case that we can't, once the information has been sent, and you can't alter it, then that provides us with some very interesting opportunities. For example, you could start publishing certified reporters' notebooks. So the notes that went into, the reporting that went into a story, right? Now I realize there's some drawbacks to publishing, but if done well, you could publish this, and basically nobody could then say, well, you made this up, right? Because it's there, and it's been verified and certified, and we would know that the information was correct as reported. This also another opportunity, a next generation alternative to wire services. So subscribers could get access to real-time, trustworthy news. News organizations could circumvent Twitter, because we got a different distribution channel now. Here's another opportunity. Circumvent the government in places where journalism and journalists are under assault. Rappler is a tremendous publication based in the Philippines, and the Philippine government keeps trying to take them down. So if we get Rappler and other organizations like it onto decentralized platforms, they can say whatever they want about the government. The government cannot come and take away their right to publish. A decentralized platform can't easily be taken down. Fourth opportunity, use it to preserve journalism regardless of closures. So this helps to solve our digital frailty problem. Your stories could live on in perpetuity. The next trend has to do with self-sovereign identity. So this is basically an identity management system that protects and authenticates individuals. So we each have something called a PII. Actually, we have several of them. These are bits of personally identifiable information, and they follow us wherever we go. So we used to use our social security number, right? We've used our driver's license as our means of identification. Then we used email. We were told to use different email addresses and passwords for everything, and did we listen? No, we did not. We did not listen. And then we went to OAuth, so give your data and life away by signing in using Twitter and Facebook. I'm not sure how we thought that was a good idea. But that's what we did. And so anyhow, now we are at this space where we have these PIIs which follow us around. And you can mine PIIs to help us live better lives. So just as an example, this is an Israeli startup that is really clever. It's called Neura. And it's sort of like an AI as a service application using our personally identifiable information. So if the app carries Neura, what it will do is track the things that you're doing. It'll look at your behaviors. It'll look at your calendar. It'll look at all different parts of your information, anonymize it, and then help you live a better life. So if you've got a chronic illness, it'll remind you to take your medications. If you are somebody with a memory issue, it will help guide you through your day. But they also are able to pool and anonymize all of the PIIs in the system to find correlations about communities. So check this out. Here's an example. If Uber, they don't do this right now, but if the Uber app used something like this, before you got into the car, I mean, we're digitally hitchhiking, right? Everybody's on the same page about what this is. So it's nice that there's a little app, but you're getting into a stranger's car, right? So this will tell you, hey, this guy normally sleeps 8 hours a night, and he's only slept 2 hours. Maybe don't get in his car, right? Or this person was just at this bar, doesn't mean they were in it, or that they were drinking, but maybe you don't want to get into that person's car either, right? It gives us actionable insights and information, and they can also use it to tell us something about the health of a community. So it's a good personal tool, but it also becomes a good reporting tool. So what comes after our PIIs? This is what I think is coming next, personal data records, PDRs. And this is where all of our data, our obvious data, our non-obvious data, winds up under one locator that is mined and refined by AI. Now, who would build and maintain such a thing where we have a single locator and all of our data is tied into it? This is shocking, I know. This is coming as a huge surprise to you. It's these guys. So we are probably looking at the big nine at some point owning all of our data and doing different things with it, which in the West probably means that our PDRs, which I don't think will wind up being interoperable because of money, we're probably looking at Amazon, Google, and Apple. But I think our PDRs can be a good thing. If we get to own them outright and they become heritable and we can pass them down, this means we have our complete medical histories that we can pass along to our children who we may not be able to tell them, about the past medical histories of us or our own parents. All of your digital transactions, banking, everything is sort of in one place, which is why now is a good time to start thinking about interoperability. All right, so the next tech trend, this builds on what I've just talked to you about, is distributed computing. And this is kind of so the best way to think about this is you go to sleep at night, you have your phone wherever next to you, and this is kind of like Airbnb for your phone. Okay, so you let somebody else come into your phone and use the compute power on your phone while you're sleeping, and in exchange you get some kind of reward. So I call this gigware, but you can think of it also as like an Airbnb for your phone. It's software that's going to power the next generation of the gig economy, and it's a way to earn something of value that you can use when you're not using your devices. This is not a brand new concept. So Berkeley had a shared resource system that it built 20 years ago to search for extraterrestrial life. Some of you may have downloaded that software application. Yeah, and so they can use your compute power at night, pool all of that compute power together to process information. Well, that has taken a giant leap forward. So this is the Gollum Network. And Gollum, again, allows you allows your device's compute power to be harnessed and used by others for things like machine learning, for rendering, for lots of different types of applications. And there's a lot of these. So Gollum is one, Gridcoin is one. And on some of these networks, you earn some kind of cryptocurrency, or you can go spend at a place like this. This is not safe for work, so do not look at Coin to Pay on your work computers, because in addition to buying things like an Intel chipset, you can also buy things that you might have found on the previous Silk Road, if you know what I'm saying. So there's lots of different applications. All right, but mostly distributed computing offers a huge opportunity for journalism. There is an opportunity here for every single person sitting in this room right now. So this is not like the future, this is today. So what I'd like to do now is to bring up, you will all know him after today. You should have known him before today. I want to bring somebody up on stage. Come on up while I'm telling everybody who you are. I would say in my entire life of watching tech and journalism and media, I have brought two of the best, most interesting startups that I've ever seen. You're going to see them next. This is one of them. It's one of the smartest, most clever startups I've ever seen. So this is Orlando Watson. He's the founder of Honeycomb. I want you to welcome him, and he's going to show you something amazing.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Amy, again, for this wonderful showcase. My name is Orlando Watson, and I'm the co-founder of Honeycomb. We help publishers monetize their mobile apps by crowdsourcing unused phone power. But before I describe how that works, let me tell you a bit about how we got here. I absolutely love local news. I'm a local news junkie. It connects me to my neighbors. I believe that local news brings people together through events in real life and contributes to building strong communities. So I was alarmed last year where in my hometown of Washington, D.C., a community paper that runs 5 weeklies went bankrupt. A second community paper that was owned was shut down by its owner, and a third was looking for a buyer. This presented what I saw there was a massive need and opportunity for new answers. So I got to working on Honeycomb. Honeycomb, like Amy mentioned earlier, is the next step in a tradition of organizations that leverage background processing power. Like Airbnb allows hosts to earn money by tapping into the excess capacity of their home, or Uber and Lyft allow drivers to earn money by tapping into the excess capacity of their car. We see an opportunity for people to tap into the excess capacity of their phones to earn money and support a good cause. In this case, quality journalism. But what we see, so the technology exists today, and there are several projects that are doing this, including Salon Media, Bail Block, and UNICEF Australia. But they're doing it in a browser, a web browser. And where we see the opportunity is in mobile. Miners, crypto miners, have been deployed on mobile, but what they do differently than us is they put that money into people's pockets. But we really see the opportunity and need to create a contribution or payment method that supports a free and independent press. So let me tell you how it works. Honeycomb integrates with your mobile app. We come in, we work with your development team, and we integrate this software into your app, which allows your users to opt in to opt into a service and a feature that when their phone is plugged in at night, it earns money through a process known as crypto mining. And I'll take a quick step back and just explain what exactly the heck crypto mining is and how it relates to the blockchain. I like to think of blockchain as a shared Google spreadsheet that we can all access and update, but not edit. People are rewarded for updating and maintaining that spreadsheet and securing it. But in order to do that, it takes immense amounts of computing power. So how do you get people to send computing power to update and maintain this database? Well, quite simply, you pay them. And you pay them a piece of each transaction that is updated to that spreadsheet. That's where this money comes from, and that's the money that we're generating, crowdsourcing, exchanging the digital currency for dollars, and sending to publishers. Our projection is that a user who turns this on for a month can earn up to $3 of new money. That's up to $36 a year. That's our optimistic assessment. We tend to be more modest in our approach and understand that this looks differently for different publishers. But the more people who opt into this service, this explicit user agreement, the more people, the greater the impact for the publisher. So why exactly does this matter? Well, for publishers, it adds an entirely new revenue stream, a revenue stream that complements traditional approaches like ads, in-app purchases, digital subscriptions, paid apps. Also, depending on the publisher, you might look at this as a growth strategy where it draws attention to your Android application and gets people to download it. You might think of this and look at it as a retention strategy to get people to return to your app and stick with it. You may even look at it as a conversion strategy where you're trying to find how to get non-paying readers or users of your app to become digital subscribers. So Honeycomb is an on-ramp from 0 to 5 or 10. We also monetize. This is a monetization method that doesn't collect any user data at all and respects people's privacy, which we know is an increasing concern for consumers today. Finally, we meet readers where they are, on mobile. The latest Pew research has shown that people are increasingly getting their news from mobile devices, so why not be there? For readers, Honeycomb is a great opportunity because it's transparent and opt-in only. Like you saw the prototype before, this is something that's explicit, and we continue to message test and user test around getting people to comprehend our message so that they know exactly what they're signing up for. And it's a frictionless payment method, which is really exciting because you set it and forget it. We're integrating cryptocurrency into everyday life for people. And quite frankly, if you're excited about cryptocurrency or Bitcoin or blockchain, I mean, this is how mass adoption happens. And lastly, like you, I care about supporting a free and independent press. This Honeycomb does exactly that. So join us. If you're interested in experimenting with this type of technology, please come speak to me. My name is Orlando Watson. Would love to show you more about what the buzz is all about. Thank you.
Thank you. So Orlando is going to be available. You should talk to him because, like I said, this is not futuristic stuff. This is right now. And you know that I've been harping on about radically different business models for news. We've got a few. Just quickly, because I've got 5 minutes left and there's more stuff to show you, I'm going to go 10 minutes late. So if you got to get up and leave, I'll know who you are. And I will hold it against you, but I understand. I'm going to bring up 2 more guests. I'm going to shave off the 3rd section. I'm making this public, though, so don't worry, you're not getting cheated out of anything. All right, and then we'll close up. All right, so the next trend is tokens and tokenomics. So different from coins, tokens are units of value that a business can create to self-govern its operations and to incentivize its users and to distribute benefits to everybody within the system, okay? Now, news organizations, as we know, have primarily relied on ad revenue and to a lesser extent subscription-based news models, and that hasn't worked out real well, right? So again, you just heard from Orlando, there's a radically different way to think about generating revenue. We're going to talk about another one now that uses tokenomics. So blockchain technology can facilitate different types of payment methods. So there's pay-as-you-go models, rewards models, but tokens can also help news organizations own more of their own value chain and keep more of the revenue generated by their audience. So this was one of the very early ones, and it was 2016. It's called Steemit. Sort of think about it as if it's more of a social network, so it's not a true content publishing platform. But if like Reddit was built on blockchain and gave people some kind of compensation for all of those comments, right? This is what that would be. Tokenomics and distributed ledger technology is going to disrupt news. It is going to happen in a really good way. So Manoush Zumrodi used to be at WNYC. She's a tremendously talented journalist. She has a great podcast out called Zigzag. And how many of you have ever used a content management system before, ever? Right. So when we talk about publishing to the blockchain, everybody's like, ooh, that's scary, and I don't know what that is. It's literally no different from, the UI is just like a content management system. So Manoush records her show and hits publish, and it goes out, but it's going out on a platform that is different. It's an independent platform, and it's built on something called Civil. All right, so what I want to do now is introduce you to 2 people who are brilliant. One of them is brilliant, and one of them is brilliant and a friend. And I believe, and you will soon also believe, that this is going to dramatically transform. I really believe this. It's going to transform the news business. So I'll stop talking. Matthew and Vivian, come on up. So these are the Civil folks. I'm going to hand this over to you. So we are going to go a little late. Please leave if you need to.
Don't leave.
But don't, really.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, everyone, for offering us the opportunity to shed light on our vision for a new way forward for us as an industry and as one of society's most vital institutions. My name is Matthew Isles. I'm the CEO of the Civil Media Company. We were founded on the deep belief and urgent calling that journalism needs a radically new paradigm in order to survive and thrive long into the future. The twin crises of sustainability and trust are well documented and, of course, well known by all in attendance today. At Civil, we have no magic bullet. We have no perfect solution and absolutely no conviction that we have all the answers or that we can do it by ourselves. Instead, we thought about what the internet used to promise: openness, transparency, and the democratization of nearly everything, as well as what the internet is capable of today. Cheap publishing, global distribution, and community spaces for all. And we thought to ourselves, what if? What if we could create a network of ethical newsrooms? Not another big tech platform that we're beholden to, but one that we build for ourselves. What if this network of newsrooms was actually owned and operated by journalists and citizens directly? What if this network were capable of promoting ideals of ethics and civility and was able to also protect itself from things like manipulation and hate? And what if this network were capable of capturing the value more fully for journalists and citizens directly in order to thrive as a community committed to independent journalism? That's exactly what Civil dreams to be. Civil dreams to be a network of newsrooms committed to ethical journalism held accountable by everyday citizens and the independent journalists who serve them. And yes, as you may have heard, we're using something called blockchain and a unique tailor-made cryptocurrency called civil tokens to do this. So what does this all mean for sustainability? So first of all, civil tokens offer seamless, borderless, direct, universal payment mechanisms. Things like new revenue opportunities, not just micro tipping, but also micro royalties. One click, wherever you are, you have your civil tokens, regardless of what website you're on. You don't have to create new accounts. You don't have to give credit card information to each and every newsroom that you want to support. You just have your currency with you, and you can support it as you go. Simple setup, bundling amongst news organizations, as well as dynamic pricing with things that are still emerging, like bonding curves. And most importantly, an entirely new economy where the value accrues first and foremost to newsrooms and readers, followed then by the technology and knowledge services that support that core relationship. Ultimately, we think what this all adds up to is a new stack for journalism. The platform upon which this all works is open source, decentralized, and owned by the people. And above, the marketplaces are seamlessly interoperable, capable of being able to bring information with you throughout various experiences, designed to be first and foremost for content creators, original reporting, while still supporting those who do ethical aggregation and advertising, and ultimately adding up to something that we think has the opportunity to inject new life into the business of journalism. And now I'm going to pass it to my partner, who can tell you more about trust.
So, hi everybody. So Matthew talked about what Civil can do for sustainability. I want to talk a little bit about, can I go backwards? What Civil can do to solve for trust. At the heart of Civil is something called the Civil Constitution. It's in draft form right now. You can find it if you go to civil.co. It's up at the top, very easy to find. And it is, for anybody in this room, it's going to be fairly garden variety standards and practices and ethics. But it is the document against which we are holding every newsroom that's on the Civil platform accountable. As Matthew mentioned, using the tokens and tokenomics, I love that, it's better than crypto economics. There is a mechanism where the community can challenge a news organization if they don't meet those criteria, and the community can vote. So it is directly community controlled and operated, and there's financial incentives and disincentives for not to have frivolous challenges and for real challenges to be rewarded. But because we want to anticipate any possible thing that could go wrong, there's a series of checks and balances. We have something called the Civil Council, which is going to be about 15, 16 very well-respected journalists, academics, free speech advocates from around the world. We've got 9 of them already. Several of them are in the room. I think Matt Thompson is still here. Emily Bell, hopefully, is still here. And others from Maria Ressa, who Amy mentioned with the Rappler, who will be there to be a check and balance in case we run into any issues. I'm running something called the Civil Foundation, which is going to be, we haven't gotten the paperwork all done yet, but will be an independent 501c3. We are overseeing the journalism governance, including the evolution of the Constitution and the Civil Council. We're going to be making grants to news organizations all over the world, those that are sort of upholding the spirit of undercovered, underreported areas and topics. We'll be doing researching and convening. And the really exciting thing is that our token sale, which Matthew's just going to mention in a second, which begins next week, all of the proceeds from the tokens, every dollar, every euro, every yen, whatever it is going to the Civil Foundation to support our grant making. So we've already got a lot of journalists on board. This is not about porn. This is about serious, fact-based journalism. Manoush Samarati, who Amy mentioned, Block Hug Chicago. We have the Colorado Sun. Those are the defectors from the Denver Post. They're breaking news. They're doing extraordinary work. There will be hundreds and thousands of newsrooms on Civil soon.
So we recognize this is a grand experiment at a time when we think the industry needs something fresh and new. And sometimes that evokes a response of, well, it might not work. Of course, it's an experiment. But what we think is that whether Civil is successful or suffers a potential failure, as sad as that might be, it won't come down to the technology alone. It'll come down to people. It'll come down to the idea of whether or not we and our communities are going to work together to build something new for this industry. And starting next Tuesday with the launch of our Civil token sale, we'll find out if that's possible. Thank you. And come find us to learn more.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thanks you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to wrap all this up. I'm going to show you some scenarios. We're going to skip to the end, and you'll go. So this is the blockchain. Think of the blockchain as Web 3.0. This is not futuristic stuff, and as Matthew, I think, very rightly and bravely said, a lot of this stuff probably, might fail. But if it doesn't survive in its current iteration, it will rise up as something else. So this is here, and now is the time for you to start doing something about it. So here's all the opportunities. News organizations over the next 5 years spend time experimenting with things like Honeycomb, with Civil. Make up your own thing, right? And radically different business models for news. Paywalls are gone, tokens are in. News organizations develop new tools and methods for PIIs to create business intelligence. This is done locally. This is done nationally. It's a new revenue stream. It provides value back to the news organizations as well as business intelligence customers. News organizations start using blockchain technology for full transparency. Trust is rebuilt. We are better informed. All right, the third trend has to do with AI and newsrooms. I'm going to fast forward to the end, but I'm making all of this available to you anyways. So you're going to get the full presentation available to download later. So let's do some next steps. All right, I've shown you many of the 10 of the 15 emerging tech trends in 2 clusters. The rest you can download later. This report this year has 108 emerging trends, and I want you to spend some time with them and go through all of them. There is something in there for everybody. All right, so this report is now available. I've been tweeting out the link. You don't have to sign up for anything. All of this research is free, and it's open. So what I want you to do is take it. You can copy from it. You can remix it. Go take it and use it in your meetings. You don't have to let me know anything. This is for you. All right? The report is free and it's open source. I want you to download it. I want you to read it. I want you to build from it. And I want you to add to it. It's a living document. And I want you to go back and explain these trends to your managers, to your leadership, to the people who are investing, to your coworkers. You need to be the catalyst. You go and you evangelize and stop having the conversations about the doom and gloom, right, of 2017, and let's focus on what can be done in the years to come. Because in your newsrooms, you have to be the guide to the future. Every single person in this room, by virtue of you being here, every single one of you has the power to take action right now. All right, so this is for you. I've just tweeted it out. This is a giant folder full of stuff. It's research, it's links to things, it's the report, it's this presentation, and some of you are taking pictures. You'll see later. We'll tweet it out later. All right, I want you to talk to Orlando. He's very smart. He's also a really nice human, and we'll just tell you more about blockchain if you need sort of like coffee version explanation of it. I want you to talk to Vivian, talk to Matthew, talk to the Civil people. I have no financial interest in this at all. I just think that for the first time, I'm starting to see some really great things. And I want you to see them too, because I want us to start building a better future. And I want you to talk to each other. Emma Carew is right over there. She's really, really smart. I'm looking at brilliant people with great ideas, so talk to each other and learn from each other. Because you have the power to build us a bright future. All right? It's time to push up our sleeves and get to work. I will see you all next year. Thank you.